With things ever switching and ever flowing in the boxing cosmos, it seems as though Shakur Stevenson has parted ways with Matchroom and is moving on to become some sort of free agent after this fight that he's going to have with William Cepeda on this magnificent card that Turkey's putting on in June or July sometime. We'll come back to that. I will do a video about that. But this video here is about Shakur Stevenson's situation that I saw brewing over the past few days. I weren't really tuning into it that much because it was a lot of tweets, a lot of hearsay, and things like he's leaving his manager and all of this type of stuff. So I was like, nah, I don't know about all of this. Let me just let things develop. And then I've seen a article in Boxing Scene. So yesterday when I saw this article in Boxing Scene, I was like, well, now it seems to be more official than not. Because Boxing Scene, from what I know, via man like Lance Pugmire, they don't really post things that aren't necessarily true. So let's read this article and we'll get into this situation. It says, Shakur Stevenson nearing promotional agreement with Lou DiBella. The managers of Shakur Stevenson are finalizing a deal for the unbeaten WBC lightweight and 3-division champion to be represented by veteran New York promoter Lou DiBella for Stevenson's planned title defense versus Mexico's William Cepeda on July the 12th in New York. So that's what it is, July the 12th. It's a brilliant card, but we'll come back to that as I said. Boxing reporter Dan Rafael first reported DiBella's involvement, a shift for Stevenson, 20-0 with 11 KOs, away from his 2-fight agreement with Matchroom's Eddie Hearn that included a title defense on February the 22nd against late replacement opponent Josh Padley in Saudi Arabia. Now, that's another situation. I'm going to come back to that, okay? What I just read there, that little section. According to an official connected to the agreement who was unauthorized to speak publicly on the matter, Stevenson's co-managers James Prince and Josh Dubin were empowered to negotiate with DiBella because Hearn and Matchroom didn't exercise their option for the second fight on the agreement with Stevenson. DiBella's team will work to represent Stevenson as the New York State Athletic Commission selects officials and assigns medical tests for the fighters. DiBella, according to an official close to the promoter, is said to be very happy for Stevenson, a fighter he views as super talented, to be in a big show. DiBella has gratitude. Of course you have gratitude. You've just been brought into a situation that you had nothing to do with and your career ain't doing nothing anyway. Hearn did not immediately return messages left for him on Monday by Boxing Scene. Hearn's parting, said the official, freed Prince to negotiate directly with the Saudi Arabia boxing financier Turkey Al-Sheikh after Stevenson previously accused Al-Sheikh on social media of shorting the purse that he originally promised when Shakur Stevenson and Cepeda sought to fight in 2024. Stevenson has since apologized for the misunderstanding and the Cepeda fight is a go. Cepeda's promoter, Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy Promotions, is expected to serve as lead promoter for the card that Al-Sheikh's company recently announced, one that includes a super middleweight bout between Edgar Berlanga and Hamza Shiraz. That shocked me. I'm going to come back to that as well. The WBC 140-pound champion Alberto Puello versus champion Subriel Matias. And there was a fight on the weekend just gone in connection to that. That's a situation as well that I'm going to talk about in a different video. And David Morrell in a light heavyweight bout against Imam Katayev. I don't even know how you pronounce that. Imam Katayev. That's the best I'm going to do with that pronouncing of that name. I probably butchered it. Kataev. I need to hear this name to know how it sounds because that probably is not it. Golden Boy promoting the card and Berlanga also moving on from Hearn following the expiration of his multi-fight agreement with the promoter isn't seen as a Saudi turnaway from Hearn and Matchroom, who are overseeing the Times Square promotion on May the 2nd and will be involved in the coming Dmitry Bivol, Artur Beterbiev light heavyweight title trilogy, and the expected return of Anthony Joshua. Turkey didn't need Eddie to make a Shakur fight, said a veteran fight official observing the Saudis' movements. That said, I strongly don't think Eddie's out, although I don't think anybody's solidly in. I'm talking about with Turkey and a Sheikh, except Frank Warren of Queensberry Promotions. If it doesn't help Turkey El Sheikh's agenda, he doesn't care who he does or doesn't do business with. Eddie can be a difficult guy, and I don't think his ego is going to handle well the idea that Turkey is running boxing. But that said, if El Sheikh wants to make a deal with Eddie for Joshua to fight Tyson Fury, I'm sure he can and will. One individual said the July 12th show may also deviate from the rotation of using Madison Square Garden or Barclays Center and get staged at another New York venue, as with the May 2nd promotion, which is going to be in Times Square. That's not even a venue, that's just the middle of the street. The individual additionally said that they expect El Sheikh to create a fuller round robin of bouts beyond the coming Ryan Garcia-Devin Haney rematch that is expected to follow the card on May the 2nd. The winner of the WBO 140-pound title bout between the champion Teofimo Lopez and Arnold Barbosa Jr. will be positioned to meet the winner of Puello versus Mateus, for instance, or Stevenson may be coaxed to move up one weight class to meet either winner if he achieves his expected triumph. You can see El Sheikh is cornering those weight classes, and we know he's not shy about overspending the individual set. So there's a few things in here that I just find a bit sketchy. For instance, it's this individual, an official connected to the agreement who is unauthorized to speak publicly. So if the official is unauthorized to speak publicly, why is he speaking to you, Lance Pugmire or Boxing Scene? That's why I don't take these informations as law. I read it, I take what I can from it, and then I put my own diagnosis and synopsis to it. And Eddie Hearn is never going to be vexed with the fact that him and Shakur have split ways. And I don't think that fight with Josh Padley was part of the Eddie Hearn and Matchroom agreement, because that card was fully paid for by Turkey El Sheikh. It wasn't that it had nothing to do with Matchroom, but Matchroom were not basically being the funding or the funders of that card. They may have been the lead promoter, but they were not the funding or the funder of this card. And I believe that the Matchroom and Shakur agreement was to do with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, regardless of the Sheikh. So I believe that they actually severed ties without any of the fights ever happening. But still, Eddie Hearn still got a little change of the Shakur Stevenson name, because he was his promoter when he loaned him to Turkey El Sheikh to put him on that card. So Eddie's won anyway, in that sense. And then Eddie's not a man that's going to keep a man under contract if he wants out of the contract, especially if he's not from the UK, especially if he has a name such as Shakur Stevenson. So that's out of the way. So that information I take with a pinch of salt. Lou DiBella now being his promoter for this up-and-coming fight with William Zepeda on July the 12th. Now, I remember before Shakur signed to Eddie Hearn that Oscar De La Hoya said he's not going to allow this fight to happen with William Zepeda if he doesn't sign with Golden Boy. So if you don't sign with Golden Boy, you're not fighting William Zepeda. So that for me makes me understand why him and Eddie have kind of split because of this situation, because behind the scenes, I believe Oscar De La Hoya is just playing hardball. Because as it said, Oscar De La Hoya is more than likely going to be the lead promoter for this card that they're doing on July the 12th. It's a very, very potent card, as Turkey El Sheikh likes to put on. So, with that being said, I believe, I don't know, I'm reading between the lines here. I believe that Shakur is like, you know what? I don't want Golden Boy to promote me, But I do need someone to look after the situation. And where me and Eddie split, it can't be Eddie because Oscar don't want to work with Eddie. So I need a promoter for this one fight. So I need someone who is of low risk and has no way of affecting what's going on with me and Oscar so that I can get this fight with Cepeda. So let me just bring in Lou DiBella. He can oversee any little grey area that needs to be dealt with. All the things that a promoter needs to do for a fighter, he can do that for me for this fight. Apparently, he's not going to get a percentage like what Eddie Hearn would have got. It's a one-off payment. I'm paying you X amount and you sort out everything. And after this situation, when we can renegotiate to see if I'm going to need you to promote me again in the future. But for now, we're just going to work on this project. Get me over the line with this project. Let me get in the ring. So once that happens, he will then become a free agent, apparently. But the thing that I heard, which I thought was very much rubbish, which seems to be the case, is that he was leaving his management team of Jay Prince and Josh Dubin. That isn't happening. They are actually the ones negotiating for Shakur all the time. It didn't say anything in this article about him leaving them. It actually said that Jay Prince and Josh Dubin were empowering Lou DiBella to sort it all out. And that's his management team doing it for him. They probably had a big influence in how he and Eddie Hearn parted ways. And I'm sure it's very amicable. I'm waiting for IFL to do a video with Eddie Hearn because they always interview Eddie Hearn, hour-long interviews with Eddie Hearn. It's probably like once a week. Or at least once a month, they do that hour-long interview with Eddie. So I'm waiting for that to come so I can hear exactly what's going on. But for now, what we know is that Shakur Stevenson has parted ways with Eddie Hearn, and it seems to be that he's teaming up with Lou DiBella to help him through this situation that he's in, where he's going to fight his mandatory, finally he's going to fight his mandatory, William Cepeda on the 12th of July on a brilliant card in New York City that is supposedly being promoted by Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions, and obviously being funded by Turki Al Sheikh. You have to understand, when Turki Al Sheikh is funding these fights and these fight cards, the promoter is there merely to just promote. They are not spending any money themselves, i.e. the promoter. The promoter's not spending any money. It's all Turki Al Sheikh. So, with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.